It is 12 o'clock, so I think it's time for us to get started. I just want to welcome everybody for tuning into this webinar for busy lawyers. These are monthly webinars where we bring you practical information in 20 to 30 minutes, and this is information you can take back and use right away. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Sam Glover. Sam is the founder of Lawyerist, a tribe of small firm lawyers who are building the future of law practice. They support client-centered, future-oriented, small firms with information, ideas, and community. Before I turn it over to Sam, I'd like to let you know that we will have time at the end for all of your questions. As they occur to you, just write them in your chat box, and I'll be able to see them, and at the end, I'll relay them to Sam. So, Sam?
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming, and I'm excited to talk about this today. So the slide materials, the slides that I've put together and that you have annotated in the materials or that you can get, we'll have a link for you I think on Mass Law Map's website, and I'll share a link with you on the last slide. Susan, I think your sound is still on, so you may want to mute yourself. So it's scoped at about an hour-long presentation. So I'm going to be stopping, hopefully right after we talk about goals. And there's a little bit more information that you may be interested in, but I'm going to skip a bunch of slides. You'll be able to see those slides in the presentation materials with some annotations on them. So I don't think you'll miss anything. But I want to make sure that I respect the time here. So with that said, let's get going. So my goal with this presentation is to help you take action on the challenges facing your law firm. We're going to do that by discussing the challenges that solo and small firm lawyers say they face. We're going to identify the obstacles that are preventing firms from taking action to move past those challenges. And I'm going to give you a free tool, no surprises. It's the Small Firm Scorecard that will help you attack your challenges methodically. We'll also help you take some of the first steps today, so that hopefully you leave here with some momentum. I'm not sure exactly how far we'll get on those first steps, but we'll do our best. Just so you know up front, the Small Firm Scorecard is free. We're offering it out there just as a tool for you to use. So there's no sales pitch here, but I am trying to promote this as something that I think will be helpful to you. So let's talk about the top challenges. And I'm not making these up. This comes from data that is assembled by we're going to look at some data assembled by Clio and by Thomson Reuters in their surveys of the legal profession. And we'll talk about kind of where that comes from and why we can rely on it. But there are three things that we know from those surveys that lawyers face. One, they face challenges getting clients. Two, they face challenges getting paid. And three, getting things done. That's administrative tasks and keeping up with technology. So let's look at the Clio numbers. Clio has been putting out for 2 years now the Legal Trends Report. This is based on data that they've gathered, aggregate data from Clio users, and it's pretty interesting. They're also doing some surveying of both Clio users, lawyers in general, and clients now. So there's a bunch of different data that goes into it, and what we learn from it is that there it is. Getting business development is getting clients, and under administrative tasks is mostly generating and sending bills, administering the office, getting things done, and then technology is in there too. What you may not realize is that people are spending about 3/4 of a typical workday, that's 6 hours, on non-billable tasks. And that's what they're struggling with. That about a third of that time goes to business development, and about another third of that time goes to office admin and technology tasks. And 21% of that time is on billing and collections, which is a lot of time spent not doing what you actually make money on. The next slide is data gathered by Thomson Reuters in their annual State of U.S. Small Law Firms survey. What's interesting about this is that Thomson asked both, what are the challenges you face, and are you doing anything about them? And so once again, we see getting clients, getting paid, and getting things done are basically, that's my parallel way of describing each of these things. But once again, we see that those are the primary challenges. And that's backed up by data from previous years. The 2017 report doesn't break it up into as much granular detail, but that is the thrust of it. What you see, though, is that most lawyers who face these challenges aren't doing anything about them. And I think that's the really kind of confusing and frustrating part of it is, okay, you know the problem and you're not prioritizing it. And there are some reasons why lawyers are struggling just to get the bills paid. How are they going to find time to address their marketing strategy and things like that? And I think all lawyers, small firm lawyers in particular, kind of know that there's a lot of stuff that comes up day to day that feels more important than stopping and stepping back and working on those bigger systems. But I think there's a little bit more to it than that. And this is my theory, is that most firms are not structured in a way that they can take action on those things.
So what you're saying.
We've been. I'm getting some background noise from somebody there.
Every other preparation that you do.
Somebody could hit mute, maybe. Here's what I think is underlying that. And what this is based on is our own data from the Small Firm Scorecard. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the scorecard is, but here are what we know from where lawyers score themselves lowest. Most firms aren't keeping track of the numbers that matter to their firm, the key metrics. How many potential clients they get, how many new clients they open, things like that. So that's one of the things that we know. Most firms don't have clear roles and responsibilities at the firm. So it's not clear who can take action on things or who's responsible for it. Most firms don't have any kind of a competitive strategy around how do they compete against other firms, obviously. And most firms don't have any kind of a marketing strategy, which is kind of key to whether or not you are going to be having trouble getting clients. So, I was just checking the group chat there to see if that was relevant to me. So, okay, sorry, I talked about the underlying issues. So let me just talk about where those numbers come from, just so that you understand. The Small Firm Scorecard is, it's a tool, but it's also kind of our answer to the question that we've been getting for years about, okay, so you've been talking for years about these challenges that small firm lawyers face. Well, what do we do about that? And the Small Firm Scorecard is kind of our answer to that question. It's what does it take for a solo or small firm to be successful? It covers all aspects of a successful small firm. If you get an A or a B on the scorecard, your firm is definitely on the right track. And if you don't, you've got work to do. And the Small Firm Scorecard is meant to be like your roadmap for how you can work on those problems. It'll help you identify where you're weak and what you need to work on and move forward. And just to be clear, it's a self-assessment. So we're saying, how are you doing on this thing? And you respond, this is how I'm doing. So the grade that you get is the grade that you've given yourself, and it's designed to be helpful, not judgy. So I hope that makes sense. And so these are all of the sections of the scorecard. And the goals and strategy are kind of overarching things here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about goals in a few minutes, but we've tried to frame the entire thing in terms of what are your personal goals, and does your firm have goals, and are you marching towards them? And so out of all of these things, that is where we've found those weaknesses. So let me talk a little bit about each piece of the scorecard. Your life and career goals is something that we didn't have in there initially. And as we were giving the scorecard to people, the responses that we were getting back is it was some kind of weird pushback on the idea that these are the things that are necessary. And I think what we decided and what we realized is that, and this is when we were sort of beta testing it with people who agreed to be our guinea pigs. And what we realized is that everything about whether your business is structured well or not needs to revolve around your own goals. Is your firm working for you? Are you getting towards the personal goals that you have for your own life and career? Is your firm helping you get there, or is it likely to in the near future? If your answer to those questions is a 10, yes, absolutely. I'm achieving my goals. I'm happy where I am. My firm is helping me get where I want to be. Then I guess everything else is less important, right? I mean, if you believe that your firm is facing extinction and you plan to work a lot past that point, then it could still be a problem. But if you're accomplishing your life and career goals, then you're doing pretty well. And that's how we've structured the scorecard, is to begin and open with, how are you doing, and are you accomplishing the things that you want to? I think the answer to those questions really clarifies, are you at the right firm? Or is your firm, if you're a solo practice or if you're in charge of the firm, is it structured well? If you are in charge of your own firm and it's not getting you where you want to be, then I think the rest of the scorecard will be helpful to you. So strategy. Strategy is probably the most important thing here. Does your firm actually have long-term goals? And is your business model built around serving clients' problems? And do you have a plan for accomplishing those goals? Right? These are, is your firm just spinning its wheels, doing the same thing every day? Or is there actually a bigger purpose to what you're doing? And this is stuff like vision and values, which I'm sure you've heard about. I think it's one thing that I want to pull out of this piece, though, is something that gets talked about a lot, right? People talk about, vision, strategy, tactics, goals, values. What are the relationship between all of these things? And I've tried to draw some diagrams, and maybe I'll get it right at some point, but I do think it's important. And because here's a question that I see a lot, right? Somebody will pop into our Facebook group and ask, hey, I've been looking at such and such software. Is it good? And that's kind of the wrong way to approach that question, right? Like, your software is a tactic, right? It's something that you can do that serves a strategy, and your strategy that serves your vision. So I want to just explain those things a little bit better, because you shouldn't start with software. You should start with, what are you trying to accomplish in the world? That's your vision. And so here's my example of, let's say I'm trying to cross a stream. My vision is me standing on the other side of the stream. My strategy is that I'm going to hop from rock to rock across the stream until I'm on the other side. Tactics are selecting flat, dry rocks instead of wet, slippery rocks whenever I can. And my goals are pretty simple here. I'm going to try and get halfway across, and then I'm going to try and get the rest of the way across. And as of my value is, well, I'm always going to look before I take a step. I'm going to try and make sure that the rock is in good shape. Hopefully that helps you think in terms of your business, right? My vision is, I want to make sure that everyone who is sued by a debt collector has competent help, whether it's from me or do it yourself. My strategy is that I'm going to make free forms available. I'm going to offer affordable legal services on an a la carte basis, and so on. My tactics are that I'm going to use technology whenever I can to short circuit the process, and I'm going to find shortcuts to the outcome that they need. And my values are, and so on and so on. So it's helpful to keep those things separate, and not to work on software if you don't understand why you're doing things. You need to have that big picture in mind, because it helps you figure out the path you're going to take towards the result you want. Okay. So now that we've talked about strategy, we can talk about technology, because there are some things. I mean, question one is, are you using technology strategically rather than just shopping for software? But there are some basic things that we just know that every firm should have. Every firm should be paperless, mobile, and secure. Paperless technology is decades old now, and most firms should be paperless. There may be some firms that have good reasons not to be, but that's pretty basic. Is your firm mobile friendly? Not just your website, but are you able to move around? Or do you empower your clients to be mobile in solving their legal problems? And are you secure? Are you using the level of attorney-client? Are you protecting the attorney-client relationship with the appropriate level of technological security? And most importantly, is everyone at your firm aware of and competent with your tech tools? If somebody at the firm refuses to use email, that's a problem. So technology is important. Client acquisition. Do you have a plan for getting clients? And a lot of firms do. I have lunch with lots of other lawyers. I do lots of public speaking or things like that. But are you actually tracking the effectiveness of those efforts so that you know what it's doing? Hopefully you are. You should want to be able to answer the question like, does this work, as much as possible? Systems and procedures. I was talking to a friend yesterday who was starting a business, and it has nothing to do with law practice, but her business is going to be in the nature of services. And we were talking about kind of if what she's doing, if people come to her and then she relies on her own conscientiousness and her attention to detail to solve each problem individually, then the problem is she's kind of pouring her own self into serving every customer that comes along. And I think that's what a lot of lawyers do, and it feels very selfless and honorable to do it, but it also makes things really uneven, right? Do you have a system for how you deliver that level of service so that you can be sure that every client does it every time? Because then if you fail with one client, it's not that you screwed up and that you're a terrible person for forgetting about them. It's that maybe there's a problem with your system and you need to fix it. Systems are really key, and you can't experiment on something that isn't a system. This doesn't mean that you remove the personality from your firm or that you try to dehumanize it. It means here is a way that we do things. Here's the level of client service that you can expect when you deal with this firm. And in order to do that, it needs to be documented, and everyone at the company needs to be on board with it. And it's really, really effective if you have a project management methodology, whether it's Agile or Kanban or old school project management is fine too, just so that you have one and that you have a way that you move things forward and through your system. Client-centered anything is kind of a buzzword these days, but I like what it describes. And I think it's really important. At the core of it is this idea of empathy. Are you doing things in a way that is designed to be friendly to your client or friendly to you? So is your intake process built around bringing your client in, welcoming them to the firm in ways that they are comfortable with? So a really simple example, I work at a nonprofit. I'm on the board of a nonprofit where we get, it's a hotline for tenants with questions about their rental issues. And one of the things we realized is that our website was not built to be mobile friendly, but we primarily serve a low-income community. And the primary way that our target demographic, the low-income community that we serve, is online is with their phones. And so offering PDFs downloads is all well and good, but those are really hard to use on a phone, especially if you don't have a printer and a scanner nearby. In order to print those, scan them back in so that you've got a copy, put them in an envelope and mail them. You'd have to go to the library and rent time on a piece or reserve time on a computer there in order to do those things. Changing the way we did intake and the way we gave access to those forms made them more friendly to clients. So you can take that same idea and apply it to just about anything that you do. We know, for example, that one of the number one complaints that clients have about lawyers is lack of communication. Well, so how do you build a strategy to make sure that all of your clients feel updated on their matters at all times so that communication is never an issue and in a way that they can understand? You know, delivering a 1,500-word email full of legalese is not particularly client-friendly. So thinking through those things from a client's perspective is a really important way to make sure that your clients are happier than the next lawyer's clients. Capturing feedback is another piece of this. You should absolutely be using Net Promoter Score both during and after the representation, or another form of customer satisfaction surveying to make sure that people are happy with the service they're getting from you, and that they are, and that you can capture suggestions for improvement. We've been doing this exercise in the Lawyerist Lab, which is our program for helping lawyers improve their scores and their firms. And it was interesting to hear that a lot of the lawyers were afraid, not afraid in like the actual quaking in their boots sense, but they were really nervous about doing this with their clients, about asking their clients if they were happy with their services and what they could do to improve. And most of the people that I am aware of sucked it up and did it anyway, and got really, really valuable feedback and constructive feedback about what they could have done to make those clients happier, or what they were doing to make those clients happy. It's really, really important to find out, to use your clients for the resource they are. A lot of lawyers think their clients are happy and are surprised by the responses they get. Not necessarily that their clients were actually unhappy, but yeah, you know, it was fine, but you could have done this better. And that's really useful stuff, especially if you can just incorporate that into the way that your firm works. So, finances, it may be surprising to see in here, but growth comes down to money. Not exactly in the way that most firms operate, though. For example, I know Jordan Furlong is a lawyer who writes about law firm legal business, and law firms and points out that most firms just take all their money out of the firm every chance they get. But a healthy business invests in the long term, right? So you need to have a financial strategy that helps you spend the money that you need to in order to grow and meet your long-term business goals. And you need to have timekeeping billing procedures that are designed so you get paid on time. Lots of lawyers push back on, well, probably not lots anymore, but for a long time, lawyers were pushing back on accepting credit cards, either because they didn't like the fees or because it just didn't feel like the right thing. But here's the thing, if you let clients pay by credit card, they're going to pay you faster and they're more likely to pay you. And often the fee is swallowed up in it's a lot cheaper than not getting paid, or if you're having to add interest to your invoices, the merchant fee is usually less than the interest charges would be. So and that's also client-centered, right? Most people don't actually write checks very often anymore. So having a billing system centered around writing checks feels pretty archaic for most modern human beings in the United States and Canada. So thinking about that from a client perspective, but also doing it because it's a win-win. It makes you get paid faster and more easily, and so it should be a win-win. So your financial strategy is really important, and it's one of the more mundane pieces of making sure you get to your long-term goals. People and staffing. This is something that I think is really important, and it's one of these fundamental things. Lots of lawyers that we talk to, lots of lawyers that take the scorecard that I've heard from over the years are like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I want to make those changes, but there's no way partner Jim is going to go along with this stuff. And that really comes down to a decision about who is going to be in this firm. And so you need to have a strategy around people and staffing and a process for doing it and some standards for doing it. We really advocate the right people, right seats model, meaning, so do you have a set of values that this firm lives and dies by? And you should. Like that is a really important part of how you hire, fire, manage at your firm. And if you really do have a set of values that this firm lives and dies by, it becomes really easy to identify the right people for the firm. These are the people whose values are aligned with your values. And of course, they're going to fit in. But more importantly, they're going to do the things that you want them to do without you having to spell it out because their values are aligned with yours. And are they in the right seat? Are they doing the kinds of tasks? Do they have the kinds of responsibilities that also align with their skills, the highest and best use of their time, their interests, their energy? So right people, right seats is a really key thing. It also makes it really easy to terminate people if they aren't the right person or they're not in the right seat. And more often than not, what you'll find is if you're hiring and firing and managing on this model, they might identify the fact that they're not in the right seat or that they're not the right person even before you do, because it starts, you use this as the model for the way you do things, and it just becomes obvious very quickly. And then it's not an antagonistic thing. It's just part of what you do. But if built into your values is, we grow strategically using technology or whatever your value is, and if partner Jim isn't on board with that, then he's not the right person to be at this firm, and you'll do better without him. And that's the kind of thing that this perspective on management and staffing helps. Inclusion and work-life balance is just important from a number of reasons. Let's take inclusion. There is abundant evidence, and this is sort of you should promote inclusion because it's the right thing to do. But B, there is abundant evidence at this point that teams that are more diverse have strategic advantages over firms that are not. And so like in Silicon Valley, I believe that those companies, even though they have problems with this, are working hard on diversity because they want to outcompete their competitors with more diverse teams. They make better decisions, and you can define diversity in a number of ways, and I'm not here to tell you exactly how to do it. But if your firm is homogenous, it's not going to do as good of a job as if it's a diverse team. And so if for no other reason, you should work on it because of that. Work-life balance is not a joke to us. And I think when you see work-life balance in job postings, many, many people chuckle at that because it feels like modern code for work your ass off and we'll pretend like you have unlimited vacation and can work part-time. work-life balance should be a real thing, right? Like that's why it comes up so high at the very beginning of the scorecard. Are goals, like, are you working? Do you have the kind of time commitment to your job that you want? This should be an actual thing. Your work should be empowering you to live the life you want, not just not something that takes over the life that you wish you had. And so, think about it. How are you facilitating that for all of your employees to make sure that they're happy and stick around? I think, there's a lot of talk about what millennials are and aren't, but what I think is very true culturally is that everyone has a lot less patience with jobs that demand everything from them and don't give them enough in return. So work-life balance is a really key thing. All right. So this is sort of, these are the actual questions on the small firm scorecard that lawyers rate their firms lowest on. They're giving themselves, I believe, an average of something like 1s and 2s out of 10 on these things, which is kind of eye-opening. Lawyers don't know how well their firm is doing. They aren't using any kind of monitoring of key performance indicators, whether those are numbers or other measurements, to monitor how healthy the firm is and predict their success. They don't have any organizational chart. This isn't a question. This is a thing that even solos should have, because your organizational chart helps you identify, oh, I could use help here. My name doesn't need to be in this box on the chart. But especially at a small firm, it's really key to know, okay, so who's responsible for doing this thing? And who are they responsible to for it? It's really hard to build a strategy when you don't know who's in charge of the strategy. Most firms don't have any kind of a competitive analysis, which is somewhat alarming when you realize that most small firms are in competitive fields like criminal law, family law, estate planning, small business, real estate. Those are competitive. You have other people in your area who are doing the same thing, and you are sharing the same client demographic. And you should understand that competitive playing field and have a strategy to make sure that you're winning more often than you're losing. And last but very much not least is a marketing plan. You need to have a plan and a strategy for how you're going to get clients, and you should be using that data back up to the KPIs thing to help determine that success. So I have 3 minutes, and I don't want to rush anything, but I think that is enough time for me to talk through goals a little bit. And what I want to use that time to talk about is what makes a goal. And this is, you can Google this there for more information, but I like the SMART idea of what a goal is, and that's obviously an acronym. Your goals should be clear. Don't describe them using objective criteria. So I want to be rich is not a SMART goal, because I want to be rich describes a condition that will almost always be receding into the future. I want to make the world a better place. Same deal. It can always be better than it is now. I want my firm to get to $1 million of revenue in 5 years. Well, that's specific. It also is measurable. There's a number in there, and you should use either a yes, no, or a number whenever you can, so that there's a way to measure whether you've gotten to your goal. I think what a lot of people who set goals find is that it's a little bit ambiguous whether or not they've actually achieved the goal, and so we want to try and avoid that. You should set ambitious goals, but not impossible ones. So they should be achievable and realistic, not impossible. How do you know that? Well, set something that feels ambitious, and once you've gotten to the finish line, or once you've realized that you can't get there, you'll know, was it too easy or is it too hard? And then you can adjust for the next round. You can set long-term goals this way. You can set short-term goals this way. It should obviously be relevant. It should be relevant to your firm. It should be relevant to your long-term goals, to your vision, to your strategy, and it should be time-bound. That means you're going to measure whether you've succeeded or failed at 1 year, or at the end of the quarter, or next week, because then you actually have some pressure to get it done. So what kinds of goals can you set? That'll be the last thing I cover. These are the personal goals that are on the scorecard that you should set for yourself. How much money you want to make, how many hours you want to work, and we include in how much vacation time in that idea, the kind of work you want to be doing, and the impact you want your work to have in the world. It's okay if you don't really have an answer to number 4. Not everybody cares whether or not their work has an impact in the world, but if you want it to, it should be a goal of yours. And our goals at Lawyers, for example, are to your solo and small firm lawyers succeeding. We built the scorecard in part to measure whether or not we are reaching that goal, because it helps us measure how many solo and small firm lawyers are at an A or a B. And so that's how we are measuring our own success, is based on your success. So those are the 4 goals we think everyone should set. And then you should ask yourself, is your firm helping you accomplish those goals? Will it? Can it? And I'm going to stop there and fast forward to the end, because I think, I think that's enough time, and I'll answer any questions. While I'm waiting to hear if there are any questions, this is the URL where you can find the score materials. I know Maslow Map will have it on its website as well, but I've collected the materials for this. You can also sign up to get updates for an ebook that I'm putting together, which is a more comprehensive guide to getting an A on the scorecard. And you can find links to the scorecard if you at this link here. So go ahead and go there and find more. And if you're wondering how to use the scorecard, we actually use it too, because there's nothing about it that doesn't apply to Lawyerist as well. And I would take it quarterly, because it should be one of your KPIs, should be your firm's average score on the scorecard, or if you're solo, your score on the scorecard. And that's how I would use it. So that's the link, and I'd be happy to take any questions. I know there was a lot of information there.
Sam,
go ahead.
Thank you so much. This was a fantastic presentation. I especially like the way your scorecard really takes all of the elements of organization dynamics, how you put all those things together to get an effective law firm that's doing what you want, making you happy. It was really terrific. I'm not seeing any questions, but I would encourage you to put them in to the chat box, and we have more time. So Sam would be able to answer any questions you have about how you measure, what you should measure, anything.
Yeah. I'd love to get.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I would love to get questions. We also have a Facebook group that you can join after you sign up for Lawyerist Insider. You can find that on Lawyerist, or you can go to lawyerist.com/insider. And there's a Facebook group, and that's another place to ask questions if you want to sort of poll other than solo and small firm lawyers. And I usually pop in there every once in a while too. So if you don't have any now, but they come up later, that's a place to go for them.
So there's somebody actually raising their hand. I'm going to unmute
Cool.
them. Okay, here we go. John, go ahead, ask your question.
Do you think we should publish our mission statements and value statements on our websites for the public to read and see?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Thanks, John. We do at Lawyerist, actually. You can find ours on our About page. And I know lots of firms, I know of firms that are doing it, and I think it's a great idea. I mean, after all, when somebody visits your website, they're trying to figure out, is this the lawyer for me? And I think that until recently, there was this idea that lawyers needed to be very sort of bland and beige and appeal to everybody. And the reality is that you're going to appeal to some people because your brand message is going to resonate with them, and you're not going to appeal to other people. And putting your mission and your vision and values on your website is a good way to do that, assuming it's something that you really want to stand behind. I think the important caveat, because values get tossed around a lot, and it's really easy to say that these are your values. It's more difficult to really make sure that those values are built into everything that you see and do. And there's nothing worse than putting your values on your website and telling somebody that this is what you believe in, and then they walk into your office and they get a different story, because now you've created that disconnect that really means that you've already not met somebody's expectations at that point, and people will really notice that. So before you put them on there, make sure they're values that you really do stand behind, and that everyone at your firm stands behind them and embodies them. Because people violating your values should be rare enough that your clients are able to notice it and bring it to your attention and excuse you for it. So
the value statement should have a two-way invitation to participate in the value.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what you can expect from us, is what you're saying when you put your value statement up there. For sure.
So it requires a good screening protocol so that people that aren't appropriate for the practice and could end up abusing the values, there's no time spent with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that you bring that up. Like we think about right people, right seats in terms of hiring, but our values are values that apply to our community too. And so, our values come up when we are trying to figure out when we're thinking through applications for Lawyers Lab or for LabCon, right? Like our values are things that we use for recognition within our community, and so. These are values that we hope radiate outward from lawyerists through the people that we deal with. And if I were running a small firm right now, these are the values that I hope that I'm using when I hire and fire, in quotes, clients, not just employees. Yeah, like I think it is a little bit of a two-way thing for sure.
When I was told 12 years ago that I had to start writing down everything that I did and memorializing all the steps that I take in doing a particular type of case, my first reaction was, oh, I don't have time for that. But as I started doing it, I really came to enjoy it. And it is so true that every time I work on a case, I improve, and I improve the forms and the steps, and it's all there the next time I start another case in that area. And it's better than it would ever have been.
One of the things that we did recently, I have believed in that for many, many years, but it was only recently that we found a way to really keep our procedures manuals up to date. And that is every other week on Monday, we have a time blocked off when everybody at Lawyerist drops everything and works on operations manuals. And we check to make sure that everything's up to date. We identify things that need to be updated. We create new manuals if we need them. And for the first time in a very long time, our manuals are a living and breathing part of how we do things. And I think it's really key and important, and sort of making those things a really relevant thing to the day-to-day work is what's really key. And it's been kind of neat to finally figure that out after so many years.
All right, great. Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so just want to thank you so much, Sam, for this phenomenal presentation. It was really terrific, and we really appreciate it. And everybody, the recording will go up on our website as soon as we can with the slides and the link that Sam has provided. I want to remind you that you can mark your calendars for our webinar next month. It will be on July 10th. And Mary Vandenack and Michael Weaver will help us understand what the 2017 Tax Reform Act means for your firm. So tune in and have a terrific afternoon, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.